We're live.
Okay, hello everybody. L Star Armstrong is here.
I
Hi, you
am
guys.
here.
Hello. I'm glad you guys are tuned in. Whoever's about to tune in, and if you aren't tuned in yet and you're listening, thank you for joining for another episode on Spreaker Podcast Radio. This is tomorrow's show, and also we are live on my YouTube channel, which is Tomorrow's Daily Life. So please like and subscribe down below for the YouTube channel. And if you guys are listening to the podcast, make sure you please like and follow so that way you receive all my notifications when I publish something new. So with that being said, but you guys make sure you can download the apps. I just wanted to say that. You guys can download the app from Google Play Store and the App Store because I know that Star just did it.
I just did it, yes.
And she is here to talk with us. She's going to kind of talk with everybody about everything, I hope. I hope she gives us a lot of information and about who she is and the programs that she's got going on and where she grew up. And I'm just so glad that you could join us. Welcome to the show, Star.
Thank you for having me.
Coming.
Yes.
Yes. So I hope that we can start. Actually, I would love to start by asking you, where are you from?
So I am originally from Gadsden, Alabama. I am definitely a Southern fried woman. Like my whole life.
Did you grow up with some good cooking and?
I did.
Mom
I
and
had
Daddy
some.
was.
Well, it's those grannies and grandmas.
Okay. So they were really doing it.
Oh yeah, they did their thing, you know, from scratch and all that good stuff. So, I'm a
so you probably can cook very well.
I do my thing, but I have changed my diet from the way that I grew up. Like as a young woman, I began to change my diet, so I don't eat a lot of the things that I grew up eating. But nonetheless. More so about health, you know, just about health reasons when you start to take account into what you're putting into your body and the effects that it has on your body. Because I stopped when I was, you know, a young girl where, you know, weight wasn't even an issue at that point, you know, and you like, But I started to read up on different things, and I was like, oh, hey, let me pump the brakes on some of these things here. But nonetheless, I grew up on some really good food, and I still feel like I eat well now. As you learn about diet and different things, like I think Black people, we put a nice twist on everything. So whatever our diet may be, even if it's vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan, or any of that, we find a way to make it taste good.
A lot of flavor.
Yes.
We need a lot of flavor.
Yes,
yes.
You don't have to forsake flavor for health. Yeah.
Salt. I know that's my vice.
Oh, you gotta stop tomorrow. You need many more tomorrows. So you gotta like I remember I had an intervention. Like, okay, so I came to Hampton Roads when I was 12 to live with my dad. And I remember I was sitting at the dinner table, and it was my dad and my uncle, and the food, you know, we were sitting eating food. And I think before I even started tasting the food, I started they were like, whoa! And I was like, what did I do? What's going on? And then it was like, stop it with the salt. And they're not even like people who, I won't say they have the best diets or whatever, but they were like, no ma'am, not with that salt action. So from that point, as a young girl, I really kind of like, because I mean, they were like, y'all, like, you're going to stop it with the salt. Okay. So that salt gets
So was it like no salt at all? Or
so they used different types of seasonings that did not have all of that sodium in it. So, yeah.
Dang. So knowledge is there, man, because I know that I use salt. And
you can't do that. You'll be getting that gout, you know, and they be like, he got the gout?
Yep. That is true. That is true. No, I don't. I don't even like the name.
It sounds real disturbing. Yes, and then all us Black people, we say the gout.
Yeah,
like it's
the
not
gout.
even
Yeah,
gout.
like it's like a real
the
big
gout.
disease, you know. Yeah, because that just the name sounds scary, right?
Sorry for all the people who have gout. Like it's not funny, but
no, it's not.
You know, it's just we don't want that if you can prevent it. Salt does a lot of bad things to us, and a lot of the things in our community that we say are like intrinsic to or inherent to Black people, a lot of that has to do, or they'll say it's hereditary. And so usually our diets are hereditary.
Is it?
So the way your mama ate. Is
yes,
the way your grandma ate, and then that's your mama. Teaches her children to eat a certain way,
right?
And we, unless you break away from that on your own, we typically eat the same way throughout our families.
Yes, we do,
throughout generations. So if your family's diet is heavy in salt and cholesterol and a lot of things like that, then that's how you're gonna cook. And so we'll say, well, my grandmother had high blood pressure and my mom has high blood pressure, runs in my family, but our high sodium diet's running in our families.
Yeah, so, that's true. That's true. Because I think I just didn't think about it being like hereditary, to do that. But it makes sense. It makes sense because you're following what your parents and their parents probably taught them, with all the bad eating that tastes so good.
But you do not have to forsake taste. It's a mental thing because, like, for me, throughout this process with diet, like a long time ago, like maybe 2001, I gave up pork and beef. And that was not very difficult because any pork and beef thing you had, there's a chicken and turkey substitute for it. Because I first did it, I was like, oh, okay, so my bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits in the morning, and it was my Philly cheesesteak subs and my grandma's ham during the holidays. I was like, those are the three things that were going to be difficult for me. But my bacon, egg, and cheese just turned into egg and cheese, or if I did it at home, turkey, bacon, and cheese, and then chicken Phillies. And the ham was not even hard to give up because the family cooked so good during the holidays that all those sides were delicious. But then later in life, when I really became more like detailed about what I was putting in my body, and I gave up chicken and turkey, that was more difficult because it was a lifestyle change. Because now you don't have the same options for picking up a quick meal. Like, there's no fast food. Right. I don't do like drive-throughs and whatnot. I'm not saying I don't eat out, but my options are not the same, and certain things I won't do anymore.
So are you vegetarian?
So I made up a word for me. Like I usually define. I'm not good with labels anyway. Like I don't feel like I fall into any label. So, but it's pesca-vegetarian. Because I'm pescatarian, which means I still eat fish.
Okay.
But then like because I don't really do dairy. And so Tarian from the vegetarian.
How bad is dairy for us?
So I want to say this to everybody listening. I'm not trying to be pesca-vegetarian. I need to coin that phrase. I need a shirt.
5 times.
Pesca-vegetarian. But I'm not trying to be preachy because I have family members who, like they say, eat everything from the rooter to the tutor.
Oh, yeah.
And I love them, to the moon and back. But we're talking about Star. So I'm just saying, so dairy is, it's, so first of all, it's a mucus. It causes mucus. It is like pus. It's gross when you start to, read up on what dairy is. And a lot of Black people are lactose intolerant. And I was a person, so I love cheese. And I'm almost like Steve Urkel, like, when he would get excited about cheese platters. Like, that's me. If you showed me some assorted cheese, I'm like, yeah, cheese. Like, I love cheese. I love cheese dance and everything. But it began to, so if you're somebody who has sinus problems, or if you notice that you get a lot of mucus, you want to double back and check on your dairy intake. Because people know about the problems that they can get from dairy, like a bad stomach and gas and things like that. That wasn't an issue that I had, but it caused me to be very, very mucusy. Really? And because I read about this and I knew about it, I started to be able to say, okay, so I noticed if I stop, and this came as an adult. It wasn't an issue that I had growing up, but I started noticing these cheese pizzas and everything that I was eating, like, okay, I'm not feeling good after I eat that. So cheese is,
so what have you substituted? What can you substitute for cheese?
So they make vegan cheese. There is vegan cheese out there, and the kind called Daiya cheese is actually still tasty. Not all vegan cheeses are created equal, just like not all regular cheese is created equal, but the brand called Daiya is still tasty and flavorful. Oddly enough, I
heard about that cheese from a friend of mine who said that's actually really good cheese.
It is, and the other ones, a lot of them suck. So I'm just here to let you know that, you know, and it's good if you have a friend or an ally, or now, you know, with the internet and everything where you can go and do research. Because if you're looking at changing your diet and you go to one of these things that are not good, it might turn you off from it and be like, nah, I don't want to do this, I'm good. Mm-hmm. But diet is the route I would say go. And it's a mindset thing. Like, you have to be doing this because you want to do it, and because of how you know, feel about your health and what you're putting in your body. Because with anything, if you have a hesitant attitude or a negative attitude or anything about it, then it's gonna be more challenging. But it's just about changing habits or whatever, and being, because see, like me, I've changed so much. Like, I can eat a salad without dressing. I'm not saying that I do it all the time, but I could, because I like the taste of like vegetables, and like I love the taste of a tomato or some spinach or the various red, yellow peppers or whatever. Like, I just love the taste of these foods now. Cauliflower. I'm not opposed to dressing, certain types of dressings, but I remember before I changed my diet, so I would make a salad, and you're like, oh, this is healthy, I'm eating a salad, and then I would drown it in blue cheese dressing. And so it was like, am I eating the salad or the blue cheese? And I couldn't really have it without the blue cheese back then. And so I'm not saying I won't have dressing, but I like all those things independently. Like, so I mean, I just really like the taste of those vegetables or whatever. So my palate, as I changed my diet, my palate changed. So certain things that I liked before are kind of offensive to me now. Like, if I had something with a lot of salt in it, I'd be like, oh, it's a lot of salt. If I had something with a lot of sugar, I'm gonna be like, oh, it's sugary. So my palate, your palate changes as you change your diet, just like they say. So when I'm saying all this, so if anybody's like, oh, she's on her diet, my other thing that I struggle with though is working out. So that's the thing. Like they say, when you work out, once you get it going, you know, you love it. Like, if you keep it going for like 21 days, because they say it takes 21 days to change a habit or to, you know, whatever. Or to form
up and down, man.
So I'm actually supposed to start
22. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go now.
Really? So I haven't ever given it 21 days. So I'm starting tomorrow with the whole workout thing.
Are you starting
tomorrow? Look, when you messaged me and I was like, see you tomorrow, and I was like, I could really make a big ha 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 out of that, but I was like, she's probably heard that so many times.
Oh gosh.
I was like, I'm not, because my name's Star, so people think they say clever things to me about Star. So when I was typing and I was like, oh, okay, yes, it's good, we're good, see you tomorrow, and I was going, but I was like, no, she'd be like, you're just the 50,000th person.
Yeah, you'd be 50,001. Right. Yeah, I've heard. Oh God.
So I get twinkle twinkle and all these things, and I'm like, oh, no one's ever said that to me before. Oh,
I haven't heard it ever. Yeah, that is it.
But yeah,
so you lived out here since you were 12.
And I've gone back and forth. So I've lived Alabama, Virginia, and Atlanta, and I seem to migrate between the three. At some point, I want to try my hand somewhere besides the South. I love the South. Like, I love the South because I'm like the culture.
Where would you go if you had a choice? Where
within the states? I don't know, because if we're talking about within the states right now, I don't know, because one thing, I want to be somewhere where there's water. I think because like I was in Atlanta over the summer. And I like being there because most of my family is there. But nonetheless, they don't have a beach. And the beach is my serenity. The beach is my place that I go at night. Yes. So, like, I don't even get relaxing in the water, but I go at night. And it's like my quiet,
Do you ever get in the water?
No. I'll let my feet get in the water. But as an adult, I don't do that. I did it as a child. You know, like I used to run up on the wave and let it smack me back and all that, but I'm like, no, what is a little questionable to me.
Yeah. I think that's why I don't get into the water.
I might let my feet, get wet or whatever, but go out there at night. I tell anybody, it's a blessing for us to be here. And if you go out there at night, it's very serene. It's very, it's very pretty, and it's calming. And I always find it, like, if you go on the ocean front, like, it's always people out there, so it's enough where you feel you can be to yourself, but it's people, like, you don't feel hey mom, you don't feel like you know, you're unsafe or you're totally by yourself or anything. And then, you know, I keep stuff on me, so if y'all just let me know.
So she ready. That was just saying, don't mess with her. Mess with her, because you know you a female at night on the beach. You might be unsafe. Don't approach us. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Let the sweet face fool ya.
I love it. Star, where did you go to school?
College, Jackson. So I went to.
So high school was out here.
High school was Lake Taylor High School in Norfolk, Virginia. Shout out to the Titans.
Shout out.
Lake Taylor Titans. Yes.
Okay. So then you went to. So that was high school.
Yes.
How was high school?
High school was cool.
Dances and.
Yeah, standard, you know, high school things. It was cool. I mean, you know, we look back at it now and I'm like, it doesn't even seem like it was so long ago, but it's getting to be like back in
years.
Yeah. So, but high school was cool. I know I didn't want to go to that school at first because I was here in 7th grade and I went back to Atlanta in 8th grade. And so the middle school that I went to here fed into another high school. And so I wanted to go to that high school because I was like, when I came here and I met people, they all, you know, they're going to Norview. So I want to go to Norview, but my dad would not do that out of district thing for me. He was like, nope, you're going to go to Lake Taylor. So I went to Lake Taylor because that's the district that, like where I lived, it went to a middle school called Rosemont, but then we went to the high school Lake Taylor. So I didn't know a lot of people there when I got there, but it ended up being cool.
Okay. So no struggles, no.
So struggles.
You know, we trying to get into the personal life of Star.
So I don't feel that I had
fun. Did you break any rules, any laws? You know. Anything?
I had a strict father.
Did you steal candy bars?
No. Only thing I ever stole was quarters off his dresser. But I had a strict father.
Did you have a strict father?
Yeah. Okay. Reggie Armstrong didn't play. Like I was.
What did your dad do?
He used to work for Norfolk Southern. He was in the Navy initially, and then he worked for Norfolk Southern. So he didn't play.
No. So how many siblings do you have?
0.
Oh, you grew up an only child?
So I have people will hear me mention my brother and sister. So I have a cousin brother because in Alabama, his mom is like my second mother, my favorite aunt. Hey, Aunt Carrie, shout out to Aunt Carrie. And her 2 children, especially her son, he and I grew up together. He's 5 years younger than me, so he's like a little brother to me. So I refer to him as my brother and his daughter as my niece. So people, I know they're like, I heard her say she's an only child, but then I hear her say niece or brother or whatever. So that's what it is, cousin brother.
Sounds very southern.
It is. I was gonna say that because I think a lot of people in the South anyway, it could be everywhere, but have really, really close relationships. Like cousins are, you know, the extended family is like a big deal. But this brother, this cousin brother, at one point we lived in the same house for a while. So I remember when he came home from the hospital as a baby. So that was my baby. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you guys were close. That was like your brother. So yeah, that's understandable. So you didn't grow up really feeling alone because you had, in essence, both of them.
I mean, she's the sister is young. She by the time she was born, I had moved here to Virginia. But I mean, I had times he and I didn't always live at the same, but we lived around the corner after that. And but I mean, saying alone, I like being an only child. Like it's actually cool because I think it molded parts of my personality that make me who I are who I am because I think only children really tend to be in a headspace. Like we're very creative.
That is true.
You use your imagination a lot when you're an only child, and you're an independent thinker. Because I'm very much that. So you're not influenced by others because it's you, and then you're around grown people a lot, and you're either in conversations with grown people or you're observing conversations with grown people a lot. And so that's probably why I'm an old soul now, because I love music. I absolutely cannot live without music. So I listen to all kinds of music, but
what's your favorite?
I think as I've gotten older, what I refer to all the time is like I say I'm trapped in the 80s, but it's really the 80s, 70s, 60s. I'll come up to the 90s sometimes, and so soul music, funk, disco funk, like not the YMCA, but the like disco funk, and then that Philly sound, and like I said, soul, R&B. I'm an old school hip hop head, but I like all types. I like all types of music. I've been getting into the blues lately. So yeah, so my musical taste.
It's good to be, well-rounded.
But I like alternative music. I like alternative. I listen rock, all of that. Yeah. I like music. Like I can't live without music. If I never was able to turn the TV on again, I could live with that. But if you told me I couldn't listen to music again, I would be like, I don't know how to do life without that. Like honestly, I don't know how to do life without music. So I'd be like,
I don't either, because
no,
music is everything.
Yeah.
I love music. So, what kind of music did you listen to when you were a teenager?
So a lot of R&B, hip hop, some alternative music.
So you listened to a lot even then. Okay. So did you find yourself in high school? Would you say it wasn't until you went to college that you really start knowing who you were and get a sense of star and who?
So I feel like I've been a progression of myself since my recollection in first grade, because if you were gonna say like who I am, I mean I'm a lot of things, but as far as my purpose, like I am like an advocate for Black people, and I have always been culturally aware, culturally astute. Like the first time I started out going to a private school called Episcopal Day School in Gaston, Alabama, and it was a predominantly white school. It was a really good school too, if you're talking about from the aesthetic of learning, westernized learning. Like it was light years ahead. And but I didn't like being that. I didn't like it there because I was one of very few Black people there. Should I be looking at you while we talking, or should I be looking at the?
I just kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
I don't want to be rude to whoever may be looking, and then I don't want to be rude to you, so I kind of, do this, I just kind of alternate, we're going to do a combination of the two.
So I didn't like being one of few Black people there, but I remember being in first grade, and a boy, his name was Michael something, like I used to remember his whole name, and recently I forgot the last name, and he said something negative about Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm in first grade and was like, oh no.
Wow.
No.
You spoke up in the first grade?
Yes, because I am the granddaughter of like civil rights freedom fighters. Like my grandparents were involved in the civil rights movement, and my mom tells me stories about how on my maternal grandparents' side, that when they would have the marches or different meetings at the churches and everything, for one, my granny was like a well-known musician, and
really,
and so they would have different activists, and my mom's told me some names, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. Like they would host it at the house, host them, and they would spend the night, and some of these things were secretive, and just and then on my paternal grandparent side, like my granddaddy, he was he passed away in 2000 93, I believe, and he was 94, and he had a master's degree in agricultural science. And I did not know that until he passed away, because he was like 15, 16 years older than my grandmother. So by the time we came of age as children, my granddaddy was well off into retirement. But we found out so much from reading the obituary and just what people were saying. He was on the school board. And when you put that in retrospect, so I'm like, oh wow, so a time when people, period, especially in rural Alabama, weren't finished in 3rd grade. And I mean people, period. Black, of course black, but white or whatever. He got a master's degree from Tuskegee when it was Tuskegee Institute. Yeah. And so
man, what an amazing accomplishment. Especially for that time, that era.
And he was on the school board. And, you know, he was heavily involved in things that were going on in our community. So I had that came from both sides. And I just think from conversations I overheard, books that were given to me to read as a very young child, and some of it just, I don't know, osmosis from just heredity, like in my genes. So I've always been racially conscious. I can't recall a time where I was not aware of that. And so then there just became that, like I said, so there's a progression that happened as you get older. You know, you have a perspective one way, because there are things, even, you know, Facebook does this thing right now where it shows you every day what you posted on that day every previous year. And so I can see things that I may have posted.
I really like that.
I love it. Man. I see things I may have posted in 2009 or 2010 that I may have a slightly different perspective on it than I did then. But it's just a progression. It's all the same focus, but maybe I had a progression or a change of thought on it since then. So I've always been on that path.
And then, so in college, you went to, what college did you go to?
So I went to ODU for a minute here, but then I moved back to Alabama, and I graduated from a school called Jacksonville State University in Alabama. And it was you would think that I would go to an HBCU, but I didn't end up going to an HBCU. I graduated from Jacksonville State, which people confuse with Jackson State in Mississippi, but this was in Alabama. And it was a very, I don't even feel like getting into that, because a lot of times I was like I've always been outspoken. I'm probably less outspoken now than I was then, if that's believable. But
no, it's not really.
It is true though.
Is it really?
Yeah, because I'm not trying to be like Miss Sophia, like all my life I have to fight. I don't want to fight. Like, I've been fighting for a long time.
So did you really have to do that then?
I mean, not fist fight, but like, yes, gosh. Like, I have had some very heated situations and with white men. Oh. And, you know, and people would rely on me the times I did have other black people in my classes. They would be looking at me, you know, like, what are you going to do? Like,
so you were the
Negro spokesperson. And so, you know, basically I've had some heated exchanges, but they all ended up respecting me and, you know, acquiescing to, like, I've had some crazy situations. Like, if we're gonna have,
can you share some?
Yeah,
I would love. Yes, I think we would all. I think whoever listening and whoever looking right now, I bet they would like. They probably
so this is funny because my mom, when I used to
please.
Tell my mom about this, and she was in Atlanta, and I would tell her, and she was like, "You just need to finish that school, get your degree, and come on home. Come on. Don't be doing all that stuff, and don't have those conversations." And I was like, I would listen to her. But then I was like, but I gotta be myself, and I can't, you know, I'm not here for the, you know, BS or the lies or whatever these situations are. And I remember sometimes I would feel like I'm gonna go to my car and somebody's gonna attack me, or I'm gonna try to start my car and it's gonna blow up. But when I was young, I was like, oh well, You better kill me. You better hope I die. But that's the mentality of a, 18, 19, 20-year-old or whatever. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to save the babies right now. Like, I don't,
right.
But basically, like, what's one example? So I remember one time I was in a class. This is not even, I don't even win this one. This is the one time I will say all the black people in the classes actually, all hands flew up. So I had a professor, I don't remember what class it was, but because I was a history, initially my major was history secondary education. So, and these classes were so white. Like, these history classes were so anyway, we were talking about something, and this white woman was like, well, I believe that the white factory workers in the north had it much worse off than the slaves in the south, because the factory workers were, they didn't have money and they didn't have anywhere to live. And, it was just really rough for them, whereas the slaves, they had free food and free somewhere to stay and, all of this stuff. She was actually saying that. And so it was like all the black hands, all 5.
Wait a minute, you said it like it was a whole classroom.
No, it was predominantly, all 5. White school, white major, but, like all 5 of the hands went up. But
like,
yeah.
Right.
Everybody actually got pissed on that one. So I didn't have to go along on that one. But I will say she ended up crying after I said what I said.
And can you share with us?
I don't. That was a long time ago. I honestly don't remember exactly.
Because you did such a great impersonation. I thought that was great.
I'm from the South.
Yeah, that's great. That was like,
I know how to do that. I grew up all around that. But actually,
that was really good.
But actually, I do all kind of impersonations of accents. Like, I once did a whole job interview because it was supposed to be a group interview, and I was the only person who came. So we were supposed to read different things. So I read everybody's part in a different accent. Yeah, I was like Southern British, Jamaican.
Oh, I would love for you to do British. Now, what kind of accent? How do you do that? Oh, we have some British. We have some British listeners. Wait a minute.
I don't know if I still get it. Let me see. Hold on, let me.
She about to do British. She about to do British accent, y'all. Wait a minute. I really want to hear.
I haven't done it in a while, and when I haven't done it, then it does like if I haven't done it in a while, it begins up being like a British / Australian mix. It's a hybrid. It's like a brilliant accent or whatever.
Oh gosh, wait a minute. Now, what kind of lines did you have, like, what kind of lines for the interview?
So I was young. This was like Old Navy. And I honestly don't remember, but it was me and this guy. It was just me and this one dude who was the manager. And he was like, all these other people were supposed to come, and he was kind of waiting for them. And then I was like, yeah, I can't wait for them forever. And so then he had the little script. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll do it all. And so I just read them all with different little accents. It was It was probably like a scenario, like a customer service scenario or something like that. He was laughing. He enjoyed it.
What? Yeah,
we had
probably
fun.
would have been dying.
Of course, I got hired.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. I know you had to get that job because that.
Yeah, but I'm a defiant employee. Like, you don't want to hire me. That's why I work for myself. I'm a defiant employee. Like, I worked at Old Navy and I never did the cash register.
Never?
I was like, I'm not gonna do it. Because
you didn't want to?
I didn't want to deal with the people.
Okay.
So,
that's what I was
I'm a lot more calm, cool, and collected than I was back then. So I was like, I don't
you probably snap on people.
Or just be like, I quit. You were saying Chris Rock?
Mm-hmm.
When she was be like, my man got 3 jobs. I don't have to work here. So especially when I was younger, it was like, my daddy is...
Oh, you brought that up real quick. I don't have to work here.
I'm not going to deal with that. Or, mean, and the economy was different back then. Yeah, so you could go, when you're talking about little retail jobs when you were a kid or whatever, and that's all you needed, then I just go get a different one or whatever. And that's, you know, young. You're young.
That's what you're thinking when you're young.
Mentality or whatever. I was in school. So that was the main priority, and that's what I was, you know, told that I needed to focus on or whatever. So don't. But see, tomorrow's getting me talking about things that are not. This is not advice that I would give to, you know, anybody. In no way am I saying that you need to, you know, just be whatever. Like this is, you know, me when I was like 20 versus me, you know, now.
Because
like,
I think stars definitely evolved. And
and
so
I mean, but
we're gonna get to that.
But don't get it twisted. I was not like wilding out and causing a scene or anything or whatever. It just would be like, you know, I could have something interesting to say back to someone. Did she just?
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah,
you did.
I did. Yeah. So. And that's. I think that's a natural, normal thing for someone who's
for a 20-year-old.
Yeah. Because that's definitely my daughter. For those who have met my daughter, who's 22, she's definitely very opinionated, because she's in college right now, working on her master's. Shout out to my baby girl,
awesome,
who's come down here and been and went to Chris Harrison's dialogue, and
that's great. That's great,
and was a part of that, and part of that movement. And
I love it.
Loved it. And we hope to be a part of that again.
Yeah,
because that was great.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get back on to Star, because we really want to know more about her and about what's going on with you. So we're talking about in college. How good was college though? Let's go back to that, because I know you experienced a lot of things, and you were telling us a little bit about that, about, you know, examples, the teacher. I mean, anything else that you experience at that college that you can talk about? That would be okay.
No, I didn't.
Talk about?
I didn't really enjoy that experience, but so it wasn't really because I've always been a defiant person when it comes to like race and so in the South there's a culture of acceptance there that this is the way it is racially, and people, you know, kind of just fall in place
and they accept it.
And I'm not that person. I'm not gonna accept a box or things that I know that are not right or fair or just. And so even many times, whether it was at in a school setting or a work setting or whatever, then I'm the person who's going to be outspoken about it. And I mean intellectually outspoken about it. Because even when I'm talking about the things that I said and did when I was younger, you know, don't make a mistake that I was just running my mouth without any sense of purpose or whatever. So but I'm gonna be the person who would be outspoken, because like which one of these examples would I give? So that school that I'm talking about, and this was in the 2000s, obviously, I had a class. They started a class in the summer called African American History, or was it African? I don't remember. And it was a big controversial thing that school was starting that particular course or whatever. And so before they started it, there was a like on the syllabus, and then there was a discussion about everybody's going to agree to respect each other and blah blah blah. And it was just like such a big issue. Yeah. And I was like, oh. So there was this older man who was in the class, and he was a white man, and he'd come in there, you know, like with his Confederate flag on the back of his shirt and this and that or whatever. And so I can't remember what we were talking about one day, but it made him upset, because a lot of times people are not comfortable having conversations about race, and I'm very comfortable with having it with in the Black community, or with also with non-Black people or whatever. It's never uncomfortable to me. And so whatever we were talking about, he was upset because this was a class that had like quite a few black people in it, and he was upset. And somebody, like, I think a girl was talking, and he was behind her like saying stuff while she's trying to contribute to the conversation in class. So when she, like, I remember I put my hand up, and the professor called on me, and I was like, so I went and read the syllabus because it said the whole thing about being respectful and blah blah blah. So I'm reading the syllabus to her and looking back at him, and I'm like, that's not what's happening here right now. And so he was like pissed. He turned beet red or whatever, and whatever we were talking about, like I looked at him and said something about it, but he got mad. Like, I don't remember the whole exchange, and this isn't even one of the most heated things that ever, like, I've had some heated situations with some white men at that school. And so he like left out the class. He left. He got up and he left. He like literally stormed out. Like, you know, on the TV or the movies when it's like storming out. Like, he stormed out. Like, I actually witnessed a storm out, and I was like,
and he really stormed out of class.
I've never seen a real storm out before. So,
and he really stormed out.
Yeah, I found that highly amusing.
Wow.
So the teacher is all nervous, and everybody's like, ugh. And so he stormed out, and he missed another class. And you can't be missing summer school classes. So he finally, when
he didn't want to confront you.
And he also didn't like being called out because so you're an adult. Like, he was way older than we were, and if you're sitting there and you're like, you know, making noise and making negative comments while people are talking, you know what you're doing. But I guess you assume that you're just gonna be able to do it, because all I did was read back to her what her syllabus said. So it's like, it's on you. Are you gonna uphold what you told us that was the expectation? So that was our expectation. He's not meeting it. So now what are you going to do about it? And so she had to say something, you know, to him. And she was very uncomfortable. And he stormed out. And when he eventually came back to class, somehow when the class was over, I end up walking out the class, and I'm like behind him. And I was like, oh man, there's no way for me to play this off. Like, I look and I see that I'm walking behind him, and I was like, he's gonna close the door. He's gonna slam the door in my face. So I'm thinking ahead of time, like, okay, so what am I gonna do when he slams the door in my face? Because I was ready. I was like, you know how you know somebody's in front of you and they hold the door for you, like, they can just, you know, even push it so that it doesn't close me. I was like, he's gonna let this door close in my face. And so I'm walking, and I was just like,
so you were ready.
How you gonna handle it? How you gonna handle it? And so I walk, and the door doesn't get closed in my face. He stands and is holding. He's holding the door now. And so then I'm like, he's gonna clip me. Right. When I walked,
you were ready.
He's gonna clip me. And so I was like, how am I act when he clips me? So he didn't clip me. So then I go on out the door, and I was like, he's gonna push me. But he didn't. He just held the door. Like, he totally, like, I don't mean, like, he held the door like, ma'am, you want to come through the door? Like that. And so
you were like, okay.
I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, that may sound like, why would I think that? But that's because I'm trying to tell you, it was hostile. The block was hot. Like, it was so many classrooms where people were, you know, just espousing things about what they thought about black people and history and different things like that were so erroneous. It was bad. It was disrespectful. It was, you know, just a lot of things that I would be the person in the class who would always challenge it. And, you know, I had professors getting nervous about it, but then the professors loved me too. And so it was just a very weird and draining energy, but I always ended up getting those, because these classes were more heavily male dominated. Like, the school I attended, the history classes were more men in them than women. And so I would get these white men coming to me after class, you know, like, I really appreciate you speaking up. And, you know, I just have so many questions I want to ask you. And, you know, so, but I mean, I had a guy to scream on me one time in the parking lot.
Now, when you say scream,
he started screaming. And so,
really? Yeah. You brought that out, and
because I told him that I wanted to have a discussion with him after the class, and so he acted like, you know, when like somebody knows that the bully is waiting for them. So after the class, they go and try to help the teacher erase the chalkboard and do all of these different things. So he got so busy after the class, and I was like, "Are you still gonna participate in this conversation?" And he was like,
"Because you were still waiting."
I didn't wait long, but I wasn't gonna wait long. But he was like, yeah, but he brought a sidekick. He was like, well, I'm bringing such and such with me. So he was a tall white guy who always talked about being a young Republican, and they would say some really asinine things in class. They were very antagonistic, and so he brought the guy with him, and I was like, if you need a sidekick, fine, you know. And when we came out and I started out of the building and I started the conversation, the other one who was smaller he tried to interrupt me, and I was like, I'm the person who initiated this conversation and you agreed, so I'm going to express myself and I will give you the opportunity. Like, I will listen to you, to what you have to say in response to what I say, but I called this conversation, so I'm going to express myself, you're going to listen, and then we'll take turns. And so being in the South, and like I said, I was way more fiery. On next level then. So being from the South, I feel there were two things there that was very you know, like, that caused him to be taken aback. I'm black and I'm a woman. And they were like, oh, you just gonna talk to me like that or whatever. And I mean, there's nothing disrespectful about that. That's how if I agree to come here and be on your show, I'm not running your show. Like, I agreed to come, so you're gonna ask me the questions you want to ask me, and I'm gonna respond. I'm gonna follow the house rules. So you agree to my conversation, you're gonna follow the rules. So basically, I start, and then
it's understandable. I think that should be, you know, it's not a no-brainer.
You know, I know.
Clearly, I guess it was because he started talking.
So the tall one, who really would be running his mouth, he put on shade. No, the tall one, who was the one I initiated, like, I asked him, but he brought the young guy as they were the same age, but he brought the shorter guy as his sidekick. So the tall guy puts on shades anyway for the conversation. He had on shades. And then as I'm talking, he just starts touching his head and was like, did he call me? He was saying something like, you liberals? And that's code word. Like, I know, because I've had that happen to me one time before. And that's your code word because you're not bold enough to come on and say the N word. So he started calling me
code word.
A liberal. And then he started saying particular, you know, he started saying things that didn't really make sense, but he was yelling. And this was after classes were out. So it was a lot of people, different buildings around there, you know, getting into their cars between classes. A lot of people commuted to that school as well. And so he's yelling. And so I'm out in the middle of the parking lot, and this tall white dude is like, all this stuff with these shades on. And it was just me and these two white guys. And I was just like, oh, dude. And then he was like, he called me angry. He was like, you're angry. And da-da-da. And so that's the word that likes to get thrown around when black people want to have conversations about race or talk about race or whatever. So we're angry or whatever. And so
even though you were calm.
So when he was saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I clutched my pearls, and I do remember this, and I was like, I'm not angry. I was like, oh my gosh, you're really coming undone. And I was like, because I feel like I learned it from watching you. Like, I see how they will agitate people, and then when you get agitated, it's like they, you know, will be like, oh my God. So I was like,
so you did that.
Yes, and I was like, oh, I'm very calm right now. But you, on the other hand, seem to be, you know, very uncomposed. And so his friend was like, dude, she's right.
Wait a minute.
Cold. Friend,
wait a minute.
Like,
yeah,
friend Benedict Arnold him was like,
the friend turned on
him and was like, she's right. You need to calm down. And he's up here having this whole fit, and I was like, yes. And I'm chuckling, and I was like, I'm happy, and I was like, clearly, I was, I don't know, this was a while ago, so I'm paraphrasing, but, basically, I'm like, I thought that you were equipped to have an intelligent conversation with me, but clearly you're not an equal. And so, like, I walked away or whatever, and he was just over there all mad for no reason, and his friend was looking at him like, oh my gosh. So whenever I saw them in class, they wouldn't look at me. The friend would kind of smile a little bit, and the other guy, he just never would look straight in my direction.
He wouldn't look at you again. Yeah. So you took him there, and he probably needed that though. There. Yeah. Yes, he did. Then at the end of the day, he did definitely, and I bet he didn't take himself there anymore after that.
He probably still takes himself. I have some very interesting stories, but they're for offline. So.
Okay, so all of us can't hear about these things.
Yeah, but it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. Being young and being in an environment. How old were you when that happened? I was in my early 20s.
Oh, okay.
So, being in an environment where it was a lot of racism, but it's entrenched in the system and the society, because the whole program in and of itself, that you have a history major, and you don't have anything talking about black people, no classes that are dedicated to the contributions of black people, or that the contributions of black people are not baked into the classes anyway. And then I think that course that I took over the summer was like African history, but so much history occurred within the South pertaining to black people, how it just shaped not only the South or the country, but the world, because so many other liberation movements have been sparked by the civil rights movement. Whether we agree with all of the tactics or outcomes from that movement or not. And so in the South, you don't have anything that's actually even talking about that is commemorating that. And then in an institution that's supposed to be an institution of higher learning, you have people who are uncomfortable having discourse about things that are coming up in the class. Like, so you have somebody challenging it. And that's something that I had to say to a professor, like, this is supposed to be an institution of higher learning. So where else besides here is this type of conversation supposed to be had and welcome? And so, so the whole system of it was just a lot of things about it that were inherently racist or whatever. And then Alabama's my home state, but it's just different. It's very different. And it was not an environment that I feel, it was not the right environment for me. So I laugh and joke about it now, but at the time, and so then, but you always, as with anything, there were other black people who attended that school, and it didn't seem to, it could be said, and some people are just more accepting of things than others, and so when you end up being that lone ranger, then it could take a toll. But
so there wasn't a lot of black people who would speak up.
No, there still aren't. It's never gonna be. Let me not say, I don't want to say that. I want to take that back. Universe, I cancel that. I can't say what there's never gonna be. But I think, and I don't want to be hard on black people for this, because what I think happens a lot of times, because we mainly deal with black people, so we'll say it's a black thing, but you don't get a lot of people who buck the system or the status quo, period. So even if it's not about race, if you're at a job and they're making people work longer and not get paid, or they're making, whatever could be happening, so people will chatter amongst the group, but you won't get that many people who will go and do something about it. So it's not just a black thing. Right. It's you don't have an abundance of people who are like, I'm gonna speak up and speak out, because you put yourself in a vulnerable space like that. So everybody's not gonna do it. It's That's never true. Gonna be an abundance of people volunteering to do that.
That is so true. What do you think we could do to change that?
So within the black community, the thing that I think, so I'll rewind a little bit. So I used to have a website called cleverspeaks.com. So my organization, and I guess we're going to get into that, my organization is called Clever Communities in Action. And so Clever is a moniker that I used to go by when I used to write. And my site was called cleverspeaks.com, and I used to write. I blogged, and I also wrote for some different publications, some locally, some nationally. And my site, I would write about social political issues pertaining to the black community. I would interview black business owners from around the country. I had photo galleries that highlighted black people doing positive or unusual things, like black people who did cave diving and went spelunk, and I had black fathers. I had people who played sports besides football and basketball and all kind of things like that. And then back when forums were popping, I had all these different forums that people could go into and have conversations with like-minded people. And eventually, probably shortly before I closed it, I even put in a dating forum so that people who were interested in what I was talking about in the movement that was created around Clever Speaks, those people could go in and, start conversing with, people who they may be interested in as a dating option or whatever. So it's a place where, if you're here, you probably are thinking along the same line as the other person.
Why did you stop this?
Because it was a one-woman show, and it got to be too much.
Oh, okay. It seems like an awesome and amazing program.
Thank you.
You had going.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed the site, but like I said, it was me handling it, and eventually I had to let it go. Mm-hmm. But I said that to say I'm so proud I kept my train of thought, because I forget stuff so much. So basically, I wrote a piece not too long ago and I lost it, and this is one of the downsides to me being analog, because I still will write stuff on paper first, and I lost the piece of paper, but it was called it was tentatively titled, what exactly is the cost of being a revolutionary? And so something that I feel that black people could do to change the fact that not so many people speak up is if you have a support system for the people who do. Because there is a lot to sacrifice if you are the person. People aren't going to jump out to be a sacrificial lamb if they're going to lose it all. You're only going to get a select few of people who will do that. And so I think if you, I remember thinking, just to bring something more recent, when Colin Kaepernick's protest began. So, and I'm so proud, it seems like that this brother is financially okay. Because he doesn't seem to be worried about anything contractually or whatever, the last that I heard of it. But so it appears he probably was handling his money well. But I remember thinking, because that's not the case for everybody. So I was like, all these people who are following this movement and who are I'm with Cap and this and that. I was like, if they don't bring him back and this causes him to befall on hard times, I know he has over 1 million followers on Instagram. How many people would be willing to put $5 in a GoFundMe? And so then you think about people on a local level, or even if you have a job and discrimination is happening in your job and you have 1 or 2 people who are taking the brunt of all of that on, if all the people even secretly, or let's talk about political issues that are going on in our communities. There's some environmental stuff that's happening in Norfolk right now. It's all kind of things, and you have people who step out and take a stand, and they become targets, and sometimes they can even be fired from their job, which is, whether you like it or not, that's people's livelihood. That's how they pay their bills. That's how they eat. That's how they take care of their, family, loved ones, whatever, or themselves, whatever their responsibility entails. And so if people were willing to say, I'll put $20 toward a goal for, and I'm talking about people who you see who are really out there making a change and taking a risk that is benefiting you or benefiting your children, and people put it up where that person for a year, because it only takes, like if you get 100 or 1,000 people, then the contribution doesn't even have to be a whole bunch of money, but where that person can know for like I got a year where I can figure this out and do something to land on my feet while I'm in the midst of this fight or whatever. But it's like we'll champion people who step out there sometimes, and we'll like and share their information on Facebook and be like, yeah, that's great, da 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 da. But if hard times fall upon them for doing that and being that warrior, then they're just kind of out in the cold. Like the community's not providing any comfort. Even if our communities had a housing space, like just something that was bought up for those type of people, where here's somewhere where you are able to stay for a year because it's real. I mean, I don't for people who haven't been in that situation, and I've been in that situation a lot. Thankfully, I've never been fired or lost livelihood or whatever, but I've been in situations of employment where it was racial things occurring, and I was outspoken about it. And you don't get the people will, I don't know. I don't want to make it about me, but the question was what could we do to change that?
Yes.
Is to be supportive of and have the backs of people who step out and do that, so that people know if I step out that way, then there's a cushion for me. And I'm talking about vetted people, not just somebody who is just like, we have to vet people, and you have to see what the track record is, where they're coming from, ask around about them or whatever. And when we're talking about true warriors or whatever, we should be willing to say, I have $20 a month that I can put toward that, because this person is doing some important things that is affecting their situation, but it's making my situation or my children's situation is going to be better as a result of the risk they're taking. Because realistically, people like MLK, Malcolm X, go down, Kwame Ture, all of that, they were poor and they died poor. And they made the ultimate sacrifice, and they had families, wives and children who were left, just trying to figure out how to make it. So we have to do a better job of being there to support. And now in the society in which we live in, because we do have things like GoFundMe, PayPal and Cash App and different things like that, for somebody who's really making a sacrifice, then you ought to be willing to do it. If you're going to give your money to Starbucks, Nike, whatever, like people, humans who are willing to really go that extra mile, support them. And then you probably would have more people who would be willing to step into that space, because we need those types of people. We know that the change that has been facilitated is a result of a lot of brave and bold individuals.
Totally agree with that. Man, see, this is why I think Star needs to start her podcast, and I'm hoping that she will, so we can all follow her and all of her adventures and things that she's into. I definitely want to talk about your projects that you're doing. You are CEO and president of a good organization, nonprofit organization. Can you tell us all about that?
Yeah, so thank you. I have been working with African American children for over 20 years. And it's something that is very near and dear to me. And I started Clever Communities in Action in 2011. And so kind of mixed with the job that I had. Well, so I've been doing this, like I said, for over 20 years, but doing it like naming an organization happened in 2011. And then but it was kind of like the job I had at the time, and Clever Communities in Action, CCIA, kind of the works and initiatives kind of merged a little bit from job to the organization. And but then in 2016, I was blessed to be able to go full time with CCIA and say goodbye as the defiant employee. I just don't have an employee personality. And defiant, not just for the sake of defiance, but just not gonna go along to get along when you know it's not right. And so I was blessed, and I mean blessed, like, oh my gosh, blessed to be able to go full time with my dream. And so thank you. And so Clever Communities in Action is we've had multiple programs, but right now our focus is on literacy and cultural representation in literacy with African American youth. The importance of teaching and learning from a culturally affirming perspective. Having worked with our youth for over 20 years in different cities and states, I have, I've heard a lot of self-deprecating comments that our children make, and this is from the babies on up to the teens, about what they feel about being Black as an individual and as our race as a whole. And it be a lot of negative things. I see beautiful chocolate children hating their skin, hating their hair texture, not wanting to be around, just attitudes of thinking that Black people are less than. A room full of Black boys who say they don't date Black girls. All just so many things. And so I feel that anything, if you're working with African American children, you should be including culture in that. You should be affirming culture within that. Like if you are a parent, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, any of that, we should, if you are, if it's a church, a mosque, anything like that, like we should be teaching accurate history, because our children go and they learn things that are not true. And we know this, but we just kind of, like they'll come and say Columbus discovered America, and, the Indians and the Pilgrims and all of that. And like, we know that that's not real. There was raping and pillaging, and you can't just discover something that was already, there and inhabited. And, we get erased. We totally get erased, and, all kind of things like that. So, accurate history should be taught. Culture should be affirmed. And so with literacy, we have two programs right now. One is called Read to Lead, and LEAD stands for Learn Everything About the Diaspora. This initiative was formerly called the Youth Book Drive, but we changed the name because it's so much bigger than just a book drive. And to date, so we do a fundraiser, and we raise money to put culturally affirming books into the libraries of Title I elementary schools. And unfortunately, I forgot to bring any of the books with me because I took them out. I have my own personal stash. But so through our program, we put a minimum of 100 books into Title I elementary school libraries each year. And we started out from 2011 to 2016. We would do 2 schools a year. And it's a 100 books of like all these titles. If you go to clevercommunities.org, and that's communities plural, clever, like CLE, V as in victory, ER, communities.org, you will see pictures. You'll also be able to find the book list. You can also make a donation to help us continue our efforts with African American youth and literacy and representation. And so we do a presentation with the children about the importance of reading, about the importance of culture, about the importance of loving ourselves from the inside outside. And it's very interesting. It's very engaging. And the children always love it, and they love seeing the books where they are positively represented. I think a lot of people, I will know that a lot of people are not aware that these types of books exist, and the value in those types of books, where when you see books with a little Black girl, and it's called I Am Enough, and her hair is out, and it's 4C hair. Yes, or you see books, I'm a pretty little black girl, or I'm a powerful black boy. You have whimsical books, like whimsical, and it's like I'm chasing dragons, but it's a little black boy character. Or you have, you know, vivid illustrations teaching children about Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X. We have the Black Panther comic books. You know, it's just an array of all this type of literature for our babies at an early age, because you know, there is a literacy gap that exists among many African American children, and while there are a plethora of reasons behind that, and we are working to attack it from, you know, several angles, but one of the reasons is a lack of interest. So things that are not relatable to the children. So you're giving, and I can relate to that because my granny started me reading when I was 3. But I was reading books that I liked, and then I remember getting in high school, and it's like or was it middle school? I don't. Yeah, it was middle school, and they want you to read like The Call of the Wild, and you know, stuff that was like so not The Grapes of Wrath, and you know, like I'm not interested in that. I don't care about that. And so even in elementary, if children are not being given material that is of interest to them, or things that are inspiring and empowering to them. Because I've had a mom to tell me before that her son wouldn't read, and she thought he couldn't read, and then she gave him some of the books that I suggest, and he started reading, and she was shocked, and she was like, well, why weren't you reading before? And he was like, because I didn't like the stuff that I was being given. And so, and these books are also inspiring. Everybody wants to see themselves represented positively. Everybody wants to see themselves represented positively. You want to see yourself in what you're doing. So, basically, you know, we put 100 books just this week into a school, an elementary school in Norfolk, Ingleside Elementary, and we had a reading pep rally that consisted of, we had some volunteer readers to come out, and it was like a group of phenomenal young black people with all business owners, attorneys, entrepreneurs, all of these different things, all of these different disciplines, and they came out and read to the children, and it was fun, and we had a DJ, and it involved literacy,
DJ
and all these books were out there. Yes, you can check us out on Channel 13 too. Go to their website, and they did a story on it.
I've seen a little bit of that, and I was going to ask you, what was that you were, I saw a little bit, and you were like, 1, 2, 3. What's your number? 1, 2, 3. And what's your number? Can you tell us what exactly was that exercise that you were doing?
Oh, no, that was just to count them off because
okay, because I was like, dang, I wonder what she's doing.
So we had the reading, the pep rally, as I call it, and so there were 6 reading stations with 6 guest readers. And so the way that worked, the children.
So she's probably, I don't know how to involve the calls in our live, so I don't know if I can do that yet. I don't know how to do that. Maybe in my next couple future we'll be able to do that and take calls, because that's probably what she's doing. She might have
exciting
for start.
Exciting, yes.
But yes. I'll have to tell her I didn't know how to do that. Sorry.
You know where to find me. We know how to find each other. Yeah. So basically they I was counting them off to find out where they would start, because they started, like, the ones went to station 1 first, the 2s went to station 2 first, and the stations were scrambled around, so the guest readers had to hold up their sign, and then when the music dropped, the babies had to walk like kings and queens over to their station. And so then when they got to their station, the readers read to them for like 7 minutes, and then when the music played, they had to go to their next station.
I know they had a ball doing that.
They did.
Because that sounds like a lot of fun.
They had a good time. We had a good time as well. And so, and then yesterday we went to Thurgood Marshall, and we had
that was in Norfolk as well.
That's in Chesapeake.
Oh, in Chesapeake. Okay.
So to date we have done 17 schools, and that would be 16 of them in Hampton Roads and 1 in Flint, Michigan. We are going to Flint next month, and then we'll do another Hampton Road School in the fall. We also have another program called Razor Sharp Readers, which is a barbershop based literacy program.
I was going to ask you about that. I think that was one of my notes too. I was going to ask you about that because I saw that on your Facebook. Yes. And about that. And so, yes, please tell us about that.
Yes, and you can find that on channel 13 and 10.
Oh.
And on clevercommunities.org. I have to put the one up from yesterday. I haven't put that on the site yet. And so that's an incentivized barbershop-based literacy program, and it's called Razor Sharp Readers. And we have a Razor Sharp Readers corner that consists of like a reading rug, a cute bookcase, the Razor Sharp Readers logo, and some kids' chairs, and a bookcase full of books catered to Black boys. Our Black boys trail our girls. So our children, I'm not saying every Black child, but with the data, Black children trail in literacy every other group. And again, this is not to say that we don't have some strong readers out there, because I've encountered some, I know some, but overall, due to gaps in this society and things that were done to the Black community, things that we are still working to overcome, there is a literacy gap that exists among a lot of our children. And so the boys even trail the girls. And so
is the gap pretty big? When you're saying the boys trail?
It's a considerable gap.
Oh,
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's definitely worthy of having to attack it separately.
Okay.
And not to leave out our girls at all, but the boys are behind when it comes to the girls. So again, some of that has to do with a lack of interest, because a lot of times the literature that's being provided are not things that a boy would be interested in. A lot of it has to do with the culture of school that's not even shaped towards the way that a boy would like it. Probably did. Yeah. But it just told her just a little while right before starting. So, Tasha, I will get with you soon, honey. So a lot of times boys get put into, because you got me on the road. You got me on the road. So a lot of times our boys get put into special education classes, and or they get disciplined harshly for just being a little boy, being energetic or whatever. And so you become labeled as a behavior problem because you don't want to sit down for hours and hours and you're 7. And so the structure of the classroom a lot of times is not something that is going to keep the interest of our boys. And so it's a handful of reasons. There can be reasons stemming from home, a lot of that. And so this program attacks it from multiple spaces. So we're providing literature that is interesting to the boys. We are also providing mentorship, because the children come in while they're waiting for their cut, they read a book. And then when they get a barber chair, they read their barber. And when the cut is over, the barber yells out, "We got a Razor Sharp Reader." And then everybody in the shop yells out, "Keep shining, young king." And then the child is able to go and select prize from Razor Sharp Reader's chest. And then their name gets put on the Razor Sharp Reader's chart. They get a star. After 5 stars, they get a free cut. And the shop has to do one community activity per month. And so that is providing them with books that are of interest to them. It's mentors who are pouring into them, because mentorship takes on different forms. And so that bond that they're building with their barber at that time, and that encouragement, is a form of mentorship. Also, having done this for a long time, one of the hardest things for me to ever find was Black male mentors. So finding people who would find men who would mentor to our boys. And so it was good to be able to, this allows a rapport. I think that going to barbershop is like a rites of passage in our community anyway. And I think bonds are formed between boys and barbers as well as men and barbers. So now here is a bond with a purpose. A bond that was going to form probably anyway, but now it has a purpose. So it's encouragement, mentorship. One of the babies, because you interviewed Jackie before, and her son was there, and when we had the launch, and it almost brought me to tears, because when he was asked what did he like about the program, he had a response that I don't think I even anticipated as to be a response. He was like, he liked the fact that he was in an environment where he was not being bullied and picked on for liking to read. That it was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was like a safe space for reading. Whereas in school or other spaces, he's getting picked on for enjoying reading and being smart. But now you're coming somewhere with grown men, grown people, who you may look up to or look at like, oh, look at them, they're so cool. And these people are encouraging you to read, and you're getting the star treatment because you are a reader. And so he's like, that's not something that typically seems to occur outside of the household. I know it's happening within his household, but and so that was very like, whoa, it got me a little emotional. So that's the Razor Sharp Readers program, and right now we are at a location called Better Barbers on Tidewater Drive in Norfolk, 7468 Tidewater Drive in Norfolk, and eventually either later this year or early next year we will be looking at expanding the program, because we do have people. We do have locations that are asking about the program.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I think that's great. Thank you. So great and motivating our young men, because that's truly what they are, young men. And we need to do that, especially if they're behind, and that's a good way to get them out there to par.
So we as a community, we have to build up our youth, and we have to be, hands-on when it comes to our children. It can't be hands-off.
More active.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that we have to pour life, we have to speak life into our babies. So because when everybody's like hashtag Tamir Rice, hashtag Trayvon Martin, hashtag, but see, Trayvon's pass by us on a daily basis, and a lot of times we'll turn our nose up or be like, or just keep going. And this is for our girls as well. And you see teenagers doing teenage things, but sometimes we allow society to make us believe the worst about our own youth, which means we think the worst about ourselves. And if we think they're bad, then we're bad, and then that means we failed. Because if you're looking at the generation behind you and you see something wrong, then you have a responsibility in how that played out, and you have a responsibility to fix it. And so I'm like, when you see teenagers, speak to them. Like, I speak to teenagers all the time, of course, little children, but I speak to teens all the time, and when they're looking shocked, I'm like, that's a problem. They shouldn't look shocked because an adult is speaking to them. And if I see behaviors that I think are not the behaviors that, we would like for them to have, because it's youthful judgment, then, I find a constructive way to, like, one time I remember I had, I used to live near, like, right by a high school, and I was coming outside, and some little girls, I consider them to be little girls, and so they're walking down the street, and they were using profanity, and so I'm coming, close to them, coming out, and I was like, how are y'all doing? Just greet them or whatever, and then they're, some of them speak back, some of them didn't, because again, it's not something normal that is occurring, and I understand that. And then I'm like, you young ladies are so beautiful, but the language that is coming out your mouth right now is not matching the beauty that I see from your face and your spirit. And I'm like, people unfortunately will judge you based out of what they hear coming out of your mouth, which could deny you certain opportunities. It just started having a conversation with them like that, and so they, I do that a lot, and I have yet to be cursed at. I have yet to be, I haven't had any bad experiences as a result of it, but they were receptive. And then I remember. I had a the same place I used to live in, a young man was walking by, and his pants were like under his behind all the way. Because I will say my generation started sagging, but then now they took it to a whole nother. It would be like the top just of the thing would show, and now it's like, so your whole booty is out. And so, like, why do you have the pants on then? And so,
and what's holding it up? if they're underneath is my thing.
Right.
Why
so, yeah. But I stopped. I was driving at this point, leaving out, and then I just stopped and I said something about it because I'm like, you're a powerful young man. You're in high school. I'm sure you're doing your thing, and I want to let you know that. But I want you to think about how you present yourself and how you feel you're presenting yourself when you have your whole behind out. And then I was like, you like girls, don't you? And he was like, yes. And I was like, so if you're getting, close to being an adult, and I was like, so the mature young ladies that you're gonna like, they probably aren't checking for the guy with his whole behind out. But it's like, you're powerful. You're powerful. So just think about how you present yourself to the world. You have a great day.
I like how you put that.
So,
because I'm sure it made him kind of think, and maybe he wasn't presented in such a manner by anyone before, like maybe someone doesn't know how to. I think maybe you think maybe people don't know how to approach young black women.
So I assist people with that, and I also with my Conveying Culture is I do workshops on that, because it's important. A lot of people don't know how to deal with our youth, and whether it is people within our community or outside of the community, because a lot of people don't know how to do that. And then even dealing with children is not everybody's shtick. Right. Or people can even be parents and they may know how to deal with theirs, but not how to deal with other people's children. And so it is very important that we have to approach our children with care, and we have to have intent on and purpose with how we deal with them. We cannot talk to them or dismiss them in any kind of way. We have to be supportive of our youth, and this is our next generation. This is the generation. So it's a reflection of us. It's a reflection of us, and that's how we should look at it. Like,
and not be afraid to.
Don't be afraid of our youth. Like, I remember I called in a radio show in Atlanta one time, and I was a lot younger, and I talked about that because I've seen a lot of times where I've seen young people in the day and they're not in school, and I roll up on a group of teenage boys and be like, what y'all doing?
You are that auntie. You are that mother.
And this was being 21. Like, Bayana. And I have not been cursed at or anything or, harmed. And then I was like, if I did get cursed at, like, I'll be okay. Like, I'll live. But, nothing bad has happened to me as a result of it. So it should be, a 50. They should be getting positive things said to them. They should know, like, so, and this is what I'm going to say to, kind of wrap our, like, you have to be willing to create the reality that you desire to see, because people will talk a lot about the good old days and how it was in the good old days. I hear my parents talk and I'm like kind of envious of that time, and I think I caught a little bit, maybe kind of a little bit of that time when I was a little kid. But where they'll say if you did something wrong, by the time you got home, your parents already knew about it, and you might have been scolded or hit back then by some neighbors on the way, only to get the master punishment. And I'm not one that's big on that really advocates hitting children, but nonetheless, like, still, back then the community was intact. The community was intact, and so basically, if we want that, we have to create that. So it should be like a whole bunch of people speaking life into our children. Like, everybody should do that. Like, teenagers should feel like that if I'm out in these streets and somebody sees me, doing something wrong, first of all, I have a community that supports me, so it's not just the negative. But also, if I'm doing something wrong, the community is going to, be there to chastise me and handle that. So that means that we as adults have to, have better relationships with one another. And then because people like to say stuff in a cliche type of manner. It takes a village to raise a child. But then I'm like, are you being an active villager?
Good point.
So, you know, it's up to us to create and maintain our village. And we have to define what a village means. And then we have to and then I'm sorry, I have to and then we have to be willing to act on that.
Okay. Because I think practice what you're saying. So stand behind your words. If you want to change, then be active and be a part of that change.
Create it. Create the change you desire to see. Like all the changes that we see now, at one point, anything that's happening now, at one point somebody thought it couldn't happen. And somebody was willing to be like, well, I think it should happen, so I'm going to make it happen. Everything. That's the case for everything we see right now. Like, somebody was like, I should be able to communicate my thoughts to other people remotely and talk about whatever it is that I want to talk about. And somebody was like, nah, that's crazy. But then they did it, or
they made it happen.
Somebody was like, definitely. You know, as a black person, I feel, although, you know, things are not as they should be, you know, there were black people who were like, hey, I want to be able to move around freely wherever I want to go. And some of that's crazy. You'll get killed. And you know, people were like, yeah, it's going to happen. So we don't realize the power that we have as human beings if we set our minds to it, set our intentions, you know, align ourselves. And you have to be strategic. I'm not saying the people who sit around and say that if you're just like, and then, you know, it will happen. But it's a combination of things. It starts with your thoughts and your beliefs. So if you believe you can create a village, then you can, you know, create a village. Like I remember when I worked at the job that I worked at before, part of the issue that I had with them, because if I'm community outreach coordinator and I'm outreaching to the community, so I'm in the community knocking on doors. Parents call me, you know, if stuff is happening in the school with the with children who I work with, parents are contacting me to talk about that, because I am legit here for, like, if a child comes into my program, then you become family. If you're working my program, you become family, and it's a gang. It's like a gang. You can't get out of it. Like, you can't escape this love.
I love that though.
I still have teens who are adults now, who are, you know, young women and men, and it's like, yeah, they still contacting me. Their parents, I still have a rapport, because we created a community, and you forever. You are in this love. Like when you get married, I'm there. When you get, there. You know, when I'm at the graduations and all of this. Like I have some college graduations coming up. So
great.
Yeah, and so we just create. It's just being bold enough to say this is how I feel it should be, and then creating that environment and caring enough to extend yourself and be vulnerable, because to put yourself out there to create that, and then for people to accept your energy, for you to give your energy, for people to accept your energy, and then to make a mutual exchange happen. But it starts with a thought, and it's not just a thought, but it's a thought, it's intention, it's following through with the intention, and having a stern belief, like a plan, but also having a stern belief, a dogged belief that whatever this is that I desire to happen for my community, it's gonna happen. And so whatever I have to do, I'm gonna do it. So
that's awesome.
But Clever Communities in Action, y'all.
Yes.
Check it out. Check it out. See what we have going on. Support us. We are headed to Flint. Awesome. We are working on a teen summer literacy program, possibly.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about that. But you wanted to finish your thought, because I knew you were just.
We're partnering with Norfolk State to do some interesting research behind African American children and positive representation in literature. Yeah, I'm excited about that. More to come
awesome.
On that. So that's one of our HBCUs. Yes. Yay. And Flint. So in 2016, I'm gonna try to say this really fast. In 2016, that's when I found out about the Flint water crisis. That's when most of the world outside of Michigan probably found out about the Flint water crisis. The word is it was going on since 2014, but people in Flint suspect longer than that. And so I found out about it. I was incensed. I was enraged. I was not able to go to New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And I'm like, here we go again. And so fortunately, a local organization called Partners in the Community, put a trip together to do a water delivery. And I was able to go, and I was able to take 2 of my teens who were at that time now freshmen in college, and 3 other young adults went with me, as well as the other people who helped organize, the people who organized the trip. And so we all rode all the way up there to Flint, Michigan.
How many hours was that?
On a bus, it was even longer, because buses stop and everything. Because we drove last year, and we did it straight through. This year, I think I'm gonna fly. I'm not sure yet. It depends on how many people are going with me. And we drove up there. It was like 10 hours. And we did the water delivery, and I had some of the babies from my program to make cards for the children in Flint, and we dropped it off at an elementary school up there, and that was very emotional. And then we did the water delivery and came on back. Last year, my organization went up there, and we did our literacy component. We did Read to Lead up there. We at Doyle Ryder Elementary School, and that was beautiful. That was phenomenal, very well received. And the school still had, both of these schools, the water fountains are taped off, and the babies, the people, the staff at Doyle Ryder Elementary School, 100% committed to the children from what I saw. Beautiful babies. And I had some people to ask me, so are you taking water? And although I did some things to help make people aware of how they can donate water, I was like, I have to stay in my lane. So when I contacted the school and talked about, they needed the books, and it actually turned out that their library had been flooded at some point. And when I was shown the culturally affirming books that they had, it was like this much. And so the babies were very excited to have it. The school was very excited to have it. And we went up there, and it was really great. And so you affect change the way that you know how to affect change. And so since then, I've made some other contacts in Flint. And when we go up there this year, the plan is to be there a little longer, get our feet planted more, possibly, and the school, oh my gosh, the school that we're going to this time is a school that focuses on teaching and learning from a culturally affirming perspective. I've never had that before. I've never had that before. All the schools that we've gone to, they've been excited about receiving the books, but I've never had a school that already focused on teaching from a culturally affirming perspective. So we are super hype about that.
Is this the first school? Man.
First school I've ever gone to that was their focus.
That was their focus.
Yeah. So they are bring it on, and we are we about to bring it. So that is gonna be super fun. So I'm still it's gonna be mid-May. Mid-May. So it's on a countdown. Mid-May to get back up to Flint. And this will be the first time I'm going, and it's not the dead of winter.
So that's
because I went in January, and then last year I went in March. So, but it was still cool. Yeah, it was not January.
January, was there still snow?
Heck yeah, it was snowing on us while we were getting cases of water out.
Oh no.
So it was cold. It was cold.
Oh wow, bless y'all, because y'all went during that time.
It was super cold, and I don't like cold. But it was great. I mean, I'm upset about what's going on, what they're doing to us there. And I've been
going on with the lead.
Yeah, I mean it's an ongoing thing, and I would challenge everybody to research that, to look it up. A bunch of children and people have been poisoned, and the thing that really outraged me about that was it was a human error, which I feel you knew what you were doing. And so, and it took them a long time to, they didn't really try to start doing anything until it started coming out into the news or whatever, and they still haven't made it right. And it's just a lot. It's a lot going on up there, and things have been done to Flint prior to this. So you take an already fragile situation and add this, and one thing that I noticed by going there is that people from Flint have a lot of pride. and being from Flint. And it's just like you take but you take a city that's already dealing with a lot, and you put one of the most vile, like, water is essential to life.
Right.
And so you poison water, and people's children have permanent brain damage, and people living an uncomfortable life. I remember one time the hot water, like, if you've ever experienced like where your hot water went out, and you know how inconvenient that is. Oh, and it just made me think about, so not, and just for like some hours, where you're having to boil water, and whatever, for everything I did. And I was like, it just immediately made me think of like being in Flint. And that's my life every day, having to boil water, hearing people talk about what happens to their skin when they take showers, and then in the summertime, it's a lot, and it'll blow your mind, and it'll make you upset. So CCIA, the goal has always been, we're taking care of home, obviously, but to be a national organization. So Flint is like our first, place that we're putting roots down outside of the Hampton Roads area.
Yay. All right. Well, good for you, Star. Congratulations to you and your success.
You. Congratulations to you.
What you're doing. Yeah. I'm trying to follow in y'all footsteps. I'm trying to,
You're doing great.
I'm trying to
also
be a part of the movement too. Trying to be a part of and helping in my community, which is why I started this podcast and the YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, please click the button. And for those of you who are on the podcast, please continue to like and follow so you can hear great people like Star come on the show and just talk about what wonderful things that they're doing in the community, because that's definitely what we're all about here and what we're trying to do. So Star, is there anything else that you would like to add to, for people to, that can help, maybe that can volunteer to do something? Maybe there might be some people watching that say, hey, well, we don't know what we can do to help, or to start a movement, or even contact you and ask what organizations are out there that they can volunteer to. Do you have any advice for them for that?
So I would say, what are your interests? What are you passionate about? And don't overthink it, because it's always a succession until we conquer or master the small things. We can't even begin to attack these grandiose plans that we have when we're like, we want to have more Black businesses, but if we don't have Black unity that's going to support Black businesses, then that's an issue. So part of it is be a good neighbor. Like, do an internal check on yourself as a Black person. What are your personal thoughts about Blackness? Are you harboring a lot of, we all crabs in a barrel, that's why we can't get anything done, we're that? Do an internal check on yourself. And if you're, if that's your barometer of Blackness, then work on correcting that. Be a good neighbor. Get in, be neighborly again. And then, like I said, with our children, speak to your neighbors, speak to our children, the neighborhood children who you may see who seem like they need guidance, or seem like they're down, or seem like they may need, just be neighborly, speak, create that environment that we want to see. And then you'll start seeing some things come to place, with that. And then you can strategize with people. It's little things like do a community cleanup day. If you and a couple of people in your neighborhood, are cool, go buy some cheap gloves from Walmart or the dollar store, some trash bags, and go around and clean up the neighborhood. Just pick up the trash and speak to people and talk to people about, why it's why you guys are doing it or whatever. So you don't have to start a nonprofit organization to make a change. And then you can also assist people who, if you feel, because I think everything is big. It's all big. But if you feel that people are doing something big, then, you can assist, because there's no one with a nonprofit organization who doesn't either need donations. Mm-hmm. So whether that's $5 or $5,000. So there's no one with an organization who doesn't need a donation, and there's no one who doesn't need help, like, some man-woman power. And, what is it that you're interested in? What are your gifts? and offer those up. If you belong to any kind of organization, a church, a mosque, a fraternity, a sorority, utilize your network to begin to do these small things that were just mentioned, and then to come together and do some things that are a little more that requires a collective. But there's always a part that everybody can play, and so don't overthink it and don't simplify. You may already be doing stuff and you're not even thinking about it. So as doing something.
I think that's great. Yeah, because we can all benefit, and we're all going to benefit if everybody's doing something together. I mean, we're all going to benefit and being a part, like a puzzle.
What did the soul food grandma say? When you put the fists together, it strikes a mighty blow.
Oh, I like that too. I like that. All right. Well, there you have it, you guys. Please, 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 again, one more time, like and subscribe. Star, can you tell them again how they can donate to your organization?
Sure. You can go to clevercommunities.org, and you can learn about our organization there, and you can make a donation. You can also find the book list, learn about our programs, but you can donate clevercommunities.org. You can also go to our Facebook page, which is Clever Communities in Action. Clever Communities in Action. You can donate. Please like it, and you can donate on our Facebook page as well. On Instagram, we are CCIA_org. And on YouTube, we're Clever Communities in Action. So subscribe up, hit me up.
And it's so important to help and donate so that she can continue to do, her and her organization can continue to do what she's doing. And that's contributing these books, these awesome books, to these schools that really need them. And
we have other things coming. Please. We have the books. We interact with the books. Like there's more with that program. And then we have Razor Sharp Readers that we're looking to expand. And we have a teen literacy program coming up.
Teen literacy
that teaches.
Too.
It's
awesome.
going to be pretty dope. But I'm keeping the reins on that till we, and so
we out here doing, back and then we can talk about it again.
We out here, making it happen and making our youth aware.
And
consider
our own podcast, and we can listen, you guys.
That'd be dope.
Yes.
So consider though, with any organization that is Black run organization that focuses on improving the Black community specifically, because we'll give to the United Way. They will corner you in the grocery store or somewhere and say, do you want to give to the Children's Hunger Fund? Which I'm not saying don't do it, but you don't know all the time where that money is going. So I'm not saying don't do it, but if you do that, also consider adding in your budget $10 a month, $20 a month, $50 a month, $5 a month to go toward an organization that is focused on improving the Black community.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And we're going to get up out of here. I'm going to let Star go because I'm sure she's got some things to do. Thank you, Star,
Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Yay! All right, you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for listening to us and Star. And you guys, please, again, like, subscribe. All right. Until next time, you guys. Bye.